Well, this morning's message comes from Luke 2, and I'll be reading 43 through 52. Happy Mother's Day to all of you. And this account from Luke is probably the one event in the relationship between Mary and Jesus that she would probably have liked to have not happened. You know, Mother's Day can bring a lot of good memories, but it also can be rough for folks. Your mother may have passed away. You know, it's easy to remember the good parts, but sometimes it's sort of difficult to remember those final moments that your mother spent with you or something like that. Some folks have bad memories of their mothers. Not every mother has been perfect, although sometimes we have higher expectations for them than we should. Not all mothers are perfect, like I said, and there's a few examples in the Bible. Jezebel is one of them. I forget where I was at. I did a funeral or a wedding or something, and beautiful young lady, and somebody had named her Jezebel. Who names their daughter Jezebel? I guess it must have a ring to it or something, but good grief. Sometimes Mother's Day is difficult for folks who long to be a mother and were not able. Sometimes that can be difficult. You yourself may be a mother who's lost a child, and that sometimes those feelings are brought back over Mother's Day, and that makes that day difficult. Or maybe you think your children, if you're a mother, have forgotten you. Society we live in these days, it's kind of easy to blow through life and forget about mom. You know, motherhood in the day and time we live in is of little value in a secular society. You know, most progressive societies believe that mothers just deliver and then walk away. On this day, though, we honor our mother. We all had one. You had to have one to get here. You would not be here without one, at least as near as I can tell. There's two certainties in life. We all face death, and we all came here through a mother's womb. Do you ever wonder why God set it up this way? You know, you look at other critters on the earth, and God had different plans for them, didn't he? Shark moms, you know, they're just kind of swimming along, and the baby pops out, and they keep going. The baby's lucky if they don't turn around and go, there's dinner. Eggs. We've all seen eggs, right? Birds everywhere right now hatching babies. We could have been hatched. Some might argue some of us were. Elephants, they spend a year or two with their mother. So they're considered good mothers in nature. But God had a different plan for those who he had created in his own image. And if you look at that plan, you can see why mothers are such an important part of it. You know, the average human being isn't probably reasonably functional in mind until they're, 30. But we'll have to go back to about 18 or 19. So I want to bring to you this morning the story of Mary and Joseph and Jesus and a trip to Jerusalem. Again, it can be found in Luke 2, 39 through 51. Luke 2, 39 through 51. So when they had performed all things according to the law and the Lord, they returned to Galilee, to their own city, Nazareth. And the child became strong in spirit and filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. His parents went to Jerusalem every year at the feast of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went to Jerusalem according to the custom of the feast. When they had finished that number of days, as they returned, the boy Jesus lingered behind in Jerusalem. And Joseph and his mother did not know it. But supposing him to have been in the company when they were at that day's journey, and sought him among their relatives and acquaintances. So when they did not find him, they returned to Jerusalem seeking him. Now as it was, after 3 days, they found him in the temple, sitting in the midst of the teachers, both listening to them and asking them questions. And when they heard him, they were astonished at his understanding and his answers. So when they saw him, they were amazed. And his mother said to him, "Son, why have you done this to us? Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously." You suppose Luke cleaned that up any? I suppose some of you mothers think Luke cleaned that up just a bit. What do you suppose? "Look, your father and I have sought you anxiously." I don't know, I can tell you my wife would have come up with a few other words besides that. And when he said to them, "Why do you seek me? You did not know that I must be about my Father's business?" But they did not understand the statement which he spoke to them. And he went down with them and came to Nazareth, and was the subject to them. But his mother kept these things in her heart. And Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and men. Thus ends the reading of God's Word. That's pretty much what we hear of Christ until he starts his ministry. It says, the child grew and became strong in the Spirit, filled with wisdom, and the grace of God was upon him. You know, more often than not, mothers are the ones who drag the kids to church. Every once in a while there's a father who does that, but I'm going to say 99% of the time, it's mom who encourages the children to get a Christian education. Most of the time, Dad would just soon and sit and read the Sunday paper, wouldn't he? Of course, I don't know. Do they still make Sunday papers? You know, most of the time I can remember my grandmother said, "We're going to church. We're going to have a good time if it kills us all." Any of you young ladies have that experience? I'm sure you guys in the back probably had that, didn't you? Look at your mama smiling. Yeah. Something in mothers makes them want to introduce their children to God. I think there's something inside them that lets them know and understand that the life that they've brought forth into this world will live forever somewhere. Dads probably don't have that understanding. They're like, "Yep, another kid. More overtime." But mothers, I think, believe and understand of that spark that they've started in them will never fully be extinguished. And that's what the Bible teaches us. That once that spark is started in a mother's womb, it will live forever somewhere. And we can debate all you want whether that somewhere is in heaven and hell after a life lived on this earth, but I believe in a mother's makeup, she understands the specialness of something that lived inside of her that was created in the image of God. I believe in mothers, that's where most of the household wisdom comes from. You know, the things that mom teaches you are the gotta haves. The things that dad teaches you are the kind of nice to haves. You can pay somebody to change your oil, you know that? Try paying somebody to brush your teeth every morning after each meal. Think about that for a second. That constant attention and that bonding between a mother and child can make or break a human being. And we can see a lot of broken people around us, can't we? And the reason is because they didn't have a mother or a motherly influence, or the mother was taken away from them, either by a job or some other kind of social pressure. And we can see the traits of those human beings in us. You know, in recent generations, we have seen that result. Look at society that we have now. And it's largely because we've devalued motherhood and the traits of motherhood that made good human beings. The symptoms of a heathen society, and one that thumbs its nose at God, is all around us. And I believe it's largely because of the lack of influence of mothers. You know, they are meant to teach us certain traits that society now devalues. When was the last time you heard anybody say the word modesty or humility? Now it's all about self-esteem, isn't it? You wouldn't want to damage little Johnny's self-esteem. Self-control. Mothers are supposed to teach us self-control. Whoa, self-control, what is that? How about manners? When was the last time you met somebody under 20 who used the word please and thank you? Or said yes ma'am or no sir? And how about purity and chastity? Those are things that are actually antithetical to what folks desire these days. When was the last time you ever saw somebody who dressed or acted like they believed or wanted to possess purity? I did a wedding yesterday. The maid of honor, who I would guess was barely 19, which means that if I think she was 19, she was probably 16, had the name of one man tattooed on this breast and the name of another man tattooed on this breast. And they were both in full display at a wedding. What's happened to chastity and purity? It's absent from us. These were the things that in the past generation were valued and were taught to us by our mothers. When you devalue mothers and motherhood, you cut the roots of the human race. What have we taught our young girls? That it's better to have a career, be outside the home, than it is to raise the next generation. You go, yeah, well, there goes that preacher again. He's all into Ozzie and Harriet. No, I'm about kids. Kids need their mother. You know, we value driving that BMW over a Ford, which means that we got to have that second income. It's better to drop the kids off at daycare. You know, lastly and more devastating, it's become acceptable to have babies without a wedding. That we see all over the place. You know, I travel from time to time, and I was sitting in a restaurant probably been a year ago. And you know, when you're sitting there by yourself eating, a lot of times you can notice things that you don't when you're talking to someone. And I was looking at the table kind of catty-cornered to me, and there were 4 generations of young women there. Well, maybe some of them weren't so young, but none of them had a wedding ring. And you could see Grandma and Mom and daughter and her kids, and none of them, not one of them, had a wedding ring. Now granted, you're making some assumptions. You're saying, yeah, well, they were never married, but you could clearly see the destruction of that whole group of people. In some communities, the number of out-of-wedlock birth is in the 70s. 70% of children grow up without a father, without a wedding ring, without a mother who can give them unconditional support. Shame on us. Lastly, this morning, mothers are the arbiters of grace. They are the best examples in this earth of God's unconditional love. Think of all the things that you did to your mother. Did she ever stop loving you? Probably not. Most of us did some pretty squirrely things. Brad, was it you or was it Randy? Some of you, one of you had to turn your mom gray. Which one was it? Brad? For some reason, buddy, I just am not believing that. Just not believing that. And I guarantee you that her last breath, your mother's last breath, her thoughts were most likely of you, or will be of you. Even though you made her crazy more than once. We think of Mary in this passage. Halfway home, her boy is missing. Can you imagine? We're talking about a day out. They've been walking for a day, and Jesus shows up missing. Talk about panic. I can remember a couple instances around our house where the boy was out of sight. He was down playing in the field, and watching my wife panic was something special. We've all had that in the grocery store or wherever, and the kid bakes the corner and you don't see him. Can you imagine being 2 or 3 days out in that? Mary has lost God's only begotten Son. Can you imagine? The angel and all that other stuff that happened to virgin birth, and she misplaced him? I'm sure she's thinking, there goes Mother of the Year. Right? But she had taught him well enough. Where did she find him? In God's house. What was he doing there? He was teaching those who thought they knew something. Isn't that special? 12-year-old teaching the most learned. Jesus' response was, I'm about my Father's business. Made possible because the mother knew her business. I thought about that, and I thought, I bet you it was a long time before his left ear went back into shape. Because I'm sure that on that 2-day walk from Jerusalem back to Nazareth, that she had a hold of it all the way. What do you figure? Any of you disagree with that? So it was probably stretched out quite a bit by the time they darkened their door. And she probably didn't let him out of her sight for a while. Any of you mothers believe that? Probably not, huh? Then we jump forward a couple dozen years and we see her at the cross. We can only imagine the anguish and the heartbreak. She, if anyone, understood the potential of her son. She had seen his miracles. She had filed all the things away in her mind, starting clear back with the shepherds and the magi. all the miracles that she must have seen as he was growing up, the miracles of his ministry, and not understanding what that cross meant, must have pierced her clear through the heart. But then that resurrection morning, she knew and understood then. She knew and understood that he was truly God's Son. Each of us will rise to new life, just like he did. That life that was started in the mother's womb, no matter how long ago it was, will be brought forth from the grave to face judgment and to hear the words, either depart from me or welcome home, good and faithful servant. Your mother's gift to you is eternal life. We should never forget that.